Yeah, it's nice to have that a little cleaner. At least I can touch it without immediately being disgusting. So right now we're in neutral. And even if I push the clutch all the way in, if I put it in reverse, you see it grinds and it moves. Maybe you couldn't see that it moved, but it moves. It's almost better just to start it in reverse. I still have the clutch in. Hey there, welcome to Farmcraft. We're working on this beast today. This guy needs a new clutch, and that's going to be a big job. I've got to pull the transmission and the PTO have a bunch of oil leaks, so I'm going to fix all of that and a couple other things. But the main thing is get the tranny out. Let's put a new clutch in it. So what it's doing is right now, the way the clutch is adjusted, it won't disengage. I mean, basically you have to drive it as if it has no clutch. Which is possible, but it's very difficult and just not feasible to do long term. You pull up to a stoplight, pretty much you have to get it in neutral, and it won't always go into neutral or you're stalling. There's only one way to adjust the clutch, and that's through the linkage on this truck. Trust me, I've checked. There's no other adjustments. And if you adjust that at all the other way, then the clutch slips. So let's get into it. This is the only adjustment there is for this clutch. Above this, it's all manual linkages. There's no cable, there's no hydraulics. It's just levers and push rods. And I've looked at all the connections there. They all look reasonable. Nothing's excessively worn. Everything seems to be functioning. And it comes down to this lever here, which then goes inside. And there you can see that inside there is the pressure plate. And a lot of these big trucks have a way you can adjust it as the clutch wears up inside there, but this does not. The only way to adjust this clutch is this turnbuckle right here. And in the process of adjusting this thing, I came down here once and I found like a piece of metal inside this hole. Like something had been crushed and torn. It was like a twisted piece of metal. And I have no idea what that was from. But I do know one thing. This needs to be replaced, and that means pulling this lovely transmission. Let's jack the front of this thing up and give me a couple extra inches of clearance underneath. Normally I would have driven it up on some boards, but with the clutch the way it is, I wasn't sure that I would be able to stop on the boards in the right spot, and I just figured, well, this will be a lot easier. Check this out. I got this new jack from Vevor. I just wasn't really sure if I was going to like it, but I actually do like this thing. It's pretty cool. It's air actuated, so the air does all the work of pumping it up. It's one of these big airbags, just like is in my drop axle. And as long as you have enough square inches and enough PSI of air pressure, you can lift an awful lot of weight. This one can lift up to 11,000 pounds, depending on how much PSI you have in it. I think it's 150 is about the max they want. My system goes up to like 100 and 125, so I'm not using it to full capacity, but it's pretty light, but it's still built really heavy. You know, it's got nice big steel plate on the bottom, and this is a big steel plate, and then it's got this pad so it's not messing up what you're pushing on, and then just some air valves here to control it. One to let air in, one to let air out, and then another one that you can pull and manually let air out. That's pretty easy. Yeah, the only thing I notice, it's faster going up and easier because the air is doing all the work, but it just takes a little while to let it down. but not that long. Just getting that shift tower. There's 4 bolts there, and then I'm going to be able to lift that out of there. I'll cover it up with something, but then that'll be ready for the transmission to be pulled. So there you get a look down into the transmission. Can't see much from here though. And that's what the underside of that looked like. So first step down here, I got to get this drive shaft off. I have a U-joint here right behind the transmission, and then I've got a carrier bearing right here, and then behind it there's a slip yoke that may or may not be seized, although I think that should be functional just from the drive shaft spinning. So hopefully I can just drop the carrier bearing down, take this off, and then slide the shaft out of the slip yoke. You know, this drive shaft is going to be heavy, so I am going to use this strap to make sure I have a hold of it and it doesn't come falling on my chest. It's not that heavy, but okay. I've got one of the back wheels jacked up, and look at that, I'm missing a bolt right there. Missing a bolt on that one. And a lot of times these things have a little keeper on them, but this one doesn't. Prevent bolts from, oh, that bolt broke off. That's going to be fun. So we'll put Loctite on these things. I better heat that thing. I think it's moving. I hope it's moving and not breaking. There it comes. So there's your cap. It has all your needle bearings in it. And this joint felt good, so I'm not planning on replacing it. Oh, you know what I forgot to do, and I'm glad I remembered now, is I need to mark where everything was. And this was on there just like that. Because I'm going to put this back together exactly how it is now. So I'm not taking these caps off. There's only going to be 2 caps. So that one's labeled 1 with a corresponding mark so that I know it was flipped that way and not the other way. See that oil dripping out of there? I gotta fix that seal. With a drive shaft, a lot of these parts wear together, and if you put it back together wrong, you'll end up with vibrations and just issues that you do not want. Now, I'm not hitting real hard. You know, that's a big heavy piece of metal, but you don't want to wail on it. You probably couldn't hurt it, but I don't want to. You just got to give it the old tappy tap. But now, this guy should be loose. The thing is I need to be able to pull it back. There's the other end of that drive shaft. There's the carrier bearing, which I'm not sure if that's going to need replaced or not. I'm going to feel it once I get it off of there, see how the bearing feels. And there's another U-joint, but this here is a slip yoke. And unless it's seized, that's going to allow this shaft to move forward and backward a little bit. and that should allow me to take it off once I undo the carrier bearing. So let's do that now. Alright, I can handle it. It's not light though. Carrier bearing feels pretty good. Man, that thing's dirty. Yeah, the slip yoke is moving. I get this front off. You know what? I think it is off. I think just the strap has it now. Here I'm taping the Woodruff key on the shaft with electrical tape so that it'll be there when it's time to put it back together. Otherwise, I will lose it. Well, it doesn't look bad. Our magnet's got stuff on it, but it's just paste. There's no metal that I can feel, nothing gritty. So that seems pretty normal. I think it just hasn't been off for a while. Okay, what do we have left to do here? This right here is the speedometer cable. And I'm not sure exactly where I'm supposed to disconnect it, but oh, look at that. It's a wonder the speedometer doesn't work right. And then up here, that is actually the backup lamp, but I don't think those work, and I don't think it matters for a farm truck. And then it's just a matter of getting all those bell housing bolts out of there. Let's see. See all those bell housing bolts up there? We're missing one right on top. Before we take those bolts out, we want to get this transmission supported. And the other thing I want to do is get this this exhaust pipe out of the way as much as possible. I decided to get most of the lower bell housing bolts out before I put the transmission jack in place, just to make things a little easier. I was kind of surprised to find how loose many of them were. I mean, these things aren't even tight. Good grief. Look at that one up there. That's how it was. Halfway out. Well, at least I didn't have to fight very hard to get them out. This is my transmission jack from Hazard Fraught. It says it can lift up to 800-pound transmission. I estimate this one probably weighs 500. You know, I've heard them referred to as Hazard Fraught. Well, my chain isn't long enough. I do want to chain this thing. I don't think it would fall, but man, I don't want to find out. I extended the chain so now it reaches all the way around. Had this super long 3/8 extension for years, and I've probably used it like once. But man, when you need it, you need it. Give you guys a good view of my hand, because I know that's what you want to see. No. Okay. So all the bolts are out, the transmission jack's in place. Here's where things get interesting. The jack needs to go up a little bit. You know what this thing is? This thing rolling? I don't like that. Look at that jack just flexing. Come on. Ooh, I don't like this at all. I feel like this thing's gonna fall if I let go of it. I jacked it up higher so that it can lean against the truck frame. Like it's just bending this jack. And now I'm trying to pull the wheels, try to get the jack back underneath it. Here I'm chalking the wheels of the jack, so hopefully it won't continue to roll to the right out from underneath the transmission. It is, it's just destroying this jack. Holy crap. This is an 800-pound jack. Come on, Harbor Freight. Man, that thing is just totally cockeyed. Why is the jack? Jack's a piece of crap is what it is. Alright, now what? I need to get those wheels back underneath the darn thing. If anything starts moving, I'm getting the hell out of the way. Crisis a little better. Stupid Harbor Freight. Ow. Well, they're straight up and down again. At least, sort of. It was the other way. God, this jack is a piece of crap. Damn. I don't have any choice but to let it down, but I'm not sure if it's going to fall over once it gets down. Ah! Come on, Harbor Freight. Well, I'm going to need a different jack to put that back in. Yeah, the side-to-side stability on that jack is just absurd. There's so much play in it, the thing just immediately flips one way or the other. 800 pounds my butt. Put another strap on it, keep it from going side to side. Hopefully I can now roll this thing out of here without it falling over. Oh, thanks to Harbor Freight. So I'm going to need to jack this thing up more to get this out. You might be surprised to hear that my 3.5 ton floor jack can't pick up the back of this dump truck. It can do the front, but not the back. This jack does it just fine. And that just doesn't look that mismatched to me. That transmission is not that big. That jack should be able to handle that. But the side-to-side stability of it is horrible. It's not a matter of the extension rods not being out or shimming properly. It's just that that plate has so much play side to side that it starts tipping to the side and the whole jack wants to roll out from underneath the transmission. Junk. Interesting view. So here is the pressure plate. This is the clutch. These teeth back here are the flywheel. And a couple things I notice. This bolt is loose, hand tight. That bolt is missing. This bolt is missing. Here's a ball bearing from something. And another one right there. I think I know what those are from. I'll show you in a second. Here's another twisted up piece of metal. This is like what I saw that fell out of it before. And then these are the, oh, I forget what you call them, but they're the fingers that you push on to release the clutch. If it's not being pushed, then the clutch is engaged. Well, those fingers are supposed to run against the throwout bearing or the release bearing, same thing. And notice that they're very worn and they're blue. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. Those are not supposed to look like that. Those have been getting hot because the release bearing was rubbing against them instead of doing what it should have done. So let's go to the other side and I'll show you the release bearing. We are now looking at the transmission again. So this is the other side. And when you push the clutch, it manipulates this lever, which that lever goes to that fork there and pushes on this throwout bearing, release bearing. Release bearing is kind of a better term because it's more descriptive, but everybody calls it a throwout bearing, myself included. And that's to release the clutch. You push this forward. Well, this is supposed to be able to spin, and it pushes against those fingers, but it's a bearing. So it's not supposed to be sliding against the fingers. It's supposed to be fixed. Well, there's my bearing. There's no balls in it. See, this is a race here. The balls are supposed to run in that and in that. And you can see a couple more of the balls there, and I'm sure a bunch of them fell out on the road. That thing is totally trashed. And this here is just a grease hose that goes down through that viewing port so that you can grease it, because that would be impossible to maintain otherwise. And I suspect the guy who I bought it from never greased it, and that's probably why we're in this position. So, yeah. This is the pilot bearing. The front of the transmission input shaft runs in this. And this is the flywheel. So this clutch has one friction disc. It has pads on both sides, much like a brake. And it gets sandwiched between this plate and the flywheel, which is what transmits the power from the engine to the transmission. Here you can see the rear main seal, which I'll be replacing. It's not leaking now, but I'm here. It's the time to replace it. Well, I'm clearly not putting that transmission back in there with that jack, at least not like it is. So I need to get it off of there. I've got a sling over that beam there and down to this 4-ton come-along. We're going to pick it up off of that jack and just set it down on some blocks. You know, these things say they aren't for overhead lifting. Well, I'm not going to lift it over my head. So this thing looks pretty stable now, but that's because the back of the transmission is resting on that plate. As soon as you start lifting it up, it gets very unstable. Look at that. I'm not doing that again. My sphincter's tired. So this is 3/4 inch solid bar. That is just perfect to lift the front. Look at that flimsy piece of junk. At this point, I'm giving it a good look over, trying to decide, do I need to go buy a new jack or is this something I can fix? That is absurd. That's just ridiculous. All right, every one of these pins is sloppy. And that equates to this. I think especially these pins, and then this side-to-side adjustment is loose right there. You can see that's letting it move. I mean, look how loose all this stuff is. The pins are all too small, so I'll make new pins that are the right size, and I'm going to make washers that actually fit and take up all the dead space and get everything tight on this. Because, you know, this is actually like 3/8 inch steel. That's 1/4 inch plate. I mean, that should be strong enough. I'm going to shorten this because there's no need for it to be that long. Like the furthest you would ever crank this thing, why would I ever crank it past there? So the handle can be right here. So yeah, I mean, if the handle's like right there, it's not going to interfere. Like it starts to hit down here. So it's only going to tip that far anyway. There's just no need for all this extra rod. It's just in the way. If the handle was in here and you put it down, you can see the handle would be right there. It's still going to be accessible to me. It's not as easy as this, but yeah, that's just in the way. That's stupid. So if I get the handle back in here, that means I can put solid plate on top of this. I'll weld it really well and then even extend it out a little bit to strong back these, but not interfere with the handle. So yeah, I'm going to make a plate that'll then come across and reinforce all of that. Get this tightened up. We'll make this jack the way it was supposed to be made in the first place. Harbor Freight. Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of Harbor Freight tools I'm happy with, but this needs to be right. This was dangerous. Man, I'm glad that transmission didn't fall off. It could have really messed up the transmission. Obviously more important that I didn't get hurt, but alright, so here is our before. Let's get to work. Every pin has play. See all the play in that pin? There's your classic like a hot dog down a hallway machine fit. 17 thousandths. 18. Looks like one of those old-fashioned fuses. You might be wondering, why didn't I just make a new one? Well, I don't have a tap for that. That's first off. So then I'd have to remake this part, which this has 2 different threads on it. Be a lot of work. Easier to just make this part work, and it doesn't waste any material. I don't feel any play in that at all now. I mean, obviously I left some clearance. Yeah. Very happy with that. So this pin's going through a lot of different holes. This, and this on both sides. The smallest dimension is 635 thousandths that it has to go through. This is 617. So I'm going to make it 633. I'm going to do the same thing, just welding on. And let's see how that does. So you can still hear the play, but you can barely feel it. But man, that's a lot better. This pin was my next victim. That's a lot better. Not done yet though. First I'm going to get all the pins and then we'll go on to other things. This one's pretty darn sloppy, and it's the one that is directly controlling the side tilt. So this one's very critical. I need to get this one right. And the holes aren't even round. This is not exactly an easy part to reproduce. I mean, I could make it. It would take many hours, and I don't really want to do that. So what I'm going to do, first thing, is I'm going to weld around the edges to beef this up. All right, there you go. I've built up all around, and that won't be in the way. Now I can bore those out. I'm actually going to use an end mill and basically drill it out and get it round. It'll be slightly oversized from where it was, but then I can make a pin that's actually going to fit in a round hole. I have a round hole. Now this pin obviously is really sloppy in there, so I need to weld on that so that it will be able to fill that 3/4 inch hole. Sometimes if I concentrate I can... Okay, there you go. Let's see how that fits. There you go. That's how it's supposed to fit. Alright, I just have these 2 more pins to do. There's lots of places where there's just slop this way, like the way this can move back and forth. I've already added washers to this so that that is much tighter than it was. So now I'm going to get a washer behind this and take up all the slack in the pin so that there isn't any side to side like that. Now, I've got washers that are pretty good size, but they won't fit on the pin, so I'm just putting those on the lathe and drilling them out. So the front to back play there, there's really not, I mean, I could keep working on it, but that's not so critical and it's much better than it was. The side to side is almost gone. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now the thing is, if I remember right, this was actually bending. I weigh less than 200 pounds. I'm putting maybe 100, 120 pounds on this thing. Harbor Freight, that is not an 800-pound jack. Basically just these 2 flat bars, and there's nothing to really keep them from wanting to rack or bend or flex. That's 200 thousandths, so that's less than a 1/4 inch plate. Now obviously a plate welded on here would help a lot, but still, it's not even 1/4 inch. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 1/4 inch that go most of the length of that and weld them on, and then put a plate on top. Then that jack will be strong. Alright, so made a little pattern. That's what I'm thinking about. I'll have that welded several spots. I'll probably drill a couple holes in it too so that I can weld through and then weld on the back side, weld right there. And that's going to be 1/4 inch plate. So that's going to make this almost 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to put a piece on top like that. That allows me to use this no matter what position it's in. It won't interfere with anything. It's just going to be a lot stronger. Then I'll have a real transmission jack. This is now a Harbor Franken jack. It is certainly no longer a Harbor Freight jack. So the side-to-side play is minimal, and the strength, I mean, that's a lot better. A lot better. I feel confident in that now. I'm sure some of you are shaking your heads at me buying a jack from Harbor Freight. You know, Harbor Freight makes a lot of stuff that I've been very happy with. I'm a DIYer. I don't need snap-on tools that are top of the line that could be used on a daily basis for years. I just need stuff that's going to do the job, and oftentimes Harbor Freight does fine with that. This was an old Harbor Freight jack, floor jack that I bought years ago, 3.5 ton jack, and you can see it's built pretty heavy. I've never had a problem with it. Yeah, to Harbor Freight, when you're making a jack, if you're going to list it as an 800-pound jack, it should be able to jack up an 800-pound transmission safely. And this clearly could not do that. You know, if you're making wrenches and they're cheap and they break, you know, that's one thing. But this could really hurt somebody. If a 500-pound transmission falls on me or on my leg or something on this concrete, that's going to be ugly. Well, I know you're not going to do anything, but you really ought to go look back at the design of this, or don't advertise this as an 800-pound jack. Yeah, it can lift 800 pounds, but it can't lift an 800-pound transmission safely. Not even close. So I've also improved this chain mechanism. The way they originally had it, it was just bolted in position here. You wrap it up over the transmission and then you put it on this chain hook, but you can't tighten it. It's just going to hold it at that link. And of course, if that link's loose, you know, it could potentially come undone like that. But it's also just not really going to hold that transmission tightly. I thought about using a ratchet strap, but I think having a chain, you don't have to worry about it getting cut on sharp edges and stuff on the transmission, is better. So here's my idea. We'll put this up over the transmission, pick a good spot for it, and then come down, bolt here now with a wing nut. So this comes down over the bolt to this, to the wing nut, and you can tighten that down as much as you want. You can really grab the transmission that way. I'm starting to feel safe in putting this thing back together. Now there's an issue. I can't get the parts for this thing. I have more time in trying to get the parts than I do in actually doing this job, including rebuilding this jack. I have been able to locate everything so far except for the throwout bearing, which I find amazing because it's not that complicated of a part. But nobody has them. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I mean, I have some ideas. I'm not going to give up on the truck, but this is a tough one. One thing I wanted to do was pose a question to the audience. Does anyone out there have a good contact to get parts for something like this? Because I've been online. I mean, I've been online for hours and hours and hours. I've been to the GM dealer. I've got their part numbers. I've been able to locate everything else. The clutch was very difficult, but I did find one. It's on the way. The rear main seal, the rear transmission seal, the parts for the PTO. I've been able to get all those, and they're all on the way. But the throwout bearing, it's a no-go. You know, I may end up having to do a whole bunch of machining to get a throwout bearing for this thing, but I'm not going to total the truck over a throwout bearing. That's just stupid. I'm obviously not worried about appearance. I'm not going to any transmission jack beauty contests. It looks a lot better than it did. Not because it's prettier, just because it'll work. Get fluid film on all these pins. Put the chain on the chain hook here. There, I got it. It's hooked. Now we can run to the side. Just with the wing nut, you can get a surprising amount of tension on there. Let's see what happens when we jack it up now. Let's see. See, now it doesn't have enough play to go flopping back and forth. That's a lot better. I can control the pitch without it flopping around like crazy. Let's go up some more. Yeah, there we go. I won't need to put it any higher than that, and that's good. That's pretty stable there. Awesome. So now I have an actual transmission jack. So this is the part I'm talking about. This is the throwout bearing, and this portion here is the actual bearing. I think I have located one of these, but of course I don't have it yet. This is the collar, and this was totally chewed up when the bearing seized, and this piece is not available. And it's pretty beat up, so it's kind of hard for me to know. I'm sure that bearing was press fit on there, but you know, how exactly was this thing originally? Because now it's just a mess. I can't even get a picture of it, you know, to really show me. So yeah, that's kind of where I am, and unfortunately where I have to end this video. You know, I really wanted to get the whole job done and get the truck back to work and show it being a dump truck, but that's just not going to happen. But we'll get it. I'm just going to have to be patient on this one. I hate tearing something apart and then just having to wait for weeks, but you know, that's the way it goes sometimes, especially with these old trucks. So there you have it, guys. The truck's in pieces. I'm waiting for parts, and I'm going to have to figure out something on this throwout bearing. We'll get it one way or another, but I do have to end this video here, and obviously look out for it in the future. Hopefully I'll be able to get it done in a week, but it depends on when those parts come in and what I can figure out. I'll be looking out for your comments. Appreciate any suggestions or anything like that. Also, if you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.